This episode is brought to you by High Point Market. Welcome to the DesignDash podcast, your guide to designing a life you love. Join us as we explore the keys to living the life you want without compromise.
Welcome back to the DesignDash podcast. I'm Laura Umansky, your co-host, here with Melissa Grove. And today's guest is someone whose work quietly shapes what our clients will want next, often before we even realize it ourselves. Stacy Garcia is a globally recognized designer, trend forecaster, and entrepreneur with more than 20 years of experience working across hospitality, commercial, and product design. She is the founder of Stacy Garcia Design, and she also has developed her own textile line, Libatex, and she's developed collections with manufacturers across textiles, wall coverings, flooring, decor. I would be shocked if you have not run across her product before. Stacy's someone who sees what's coming long before it shows up in one of our residential projects or before your client is adding it to her Pinterest board. So what I'm excited about talking about today is not just trends, but how to think about trends as a residential firm owner, like what matters and what doesn't, what's worth investing in for you and your clients, and then also how hospitality and like global design is influencing the homes we design, even if we don't realize it. So Stacy, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're happy you're here.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you, Laura and Melissa.
Okay, let's just start at the beginning, because I think that our listeners always want to know at least a little backstory. And so you started your own company when you were in your mid-20s, so young. You're a risk taker, it sounds like, by nature. But you also started working inside of larger brands. So when you started your own company, what problem were you actually trying to solve for yourself? Not necessarily like the market as a whole, but for yourself when you decided to build your own business.
Yeah, I think my motivation was probably similar to a lot of people listening here, which is the first thing I was trying to solve for myself was what I thought was going to be freedom.
Right?
Okay. So, you don't know what you don't know. It doesn't matter if you're in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s. By your 50s, you start to know more, so we hit different chapters in our life, but certainly, we all have that stage where we have a dream and a vision for things and we're not afraid of hard work. When I started, I was pregnant actually with my first son. And I thought to myself, I didn't want to commute into Manhattan anymore. I'm a New Yorker. I'm going to start my own business, and that's going to give me the freedom and flexibility to, be able to work from home before that was a big thing and not have to travel so much and have control over my hours. And of course, as anyone listening who's ever started a business, you go from working like a 9-to-5 job with a half hour, lunch break, or if you're lucky, an hour lunch break, to you work 24 hours a day. Like it was for the first 2 years, I didn't sleep, getting this thing off the ground. So the problem I was trying to solve for myself was a myth at that point, but I'm glad I was, deluded into thinking that I would actually have control over my time, because I never would have gone off on my own. I think if I realized how much it was going to take, but once it started to click, the rewards were 1,000% worth it. Like I would do it all over again.
And why this industry? You mentioned before the call that you don't have any formal design training. And I know that for a lot of our audience, that's a big hurdle for them. They think, well, nobody's going to want to work with me. I don't have any formal training. And obviously that's not the case.
Yeah. So for me, I don't have formal interior design training. So I did not go to school for that, but I do have a background in fine art. And so, my pathway into product development was pretty linear out of school. So I actually have a degree in something called surface pattern design, which there's only, I don't know, at the time, 3 schools in the entire country that offered a formal degree, where you could go to like London, where it's a bigger thing, and get your degree there. But I took that and was able to sort of start within the industry, first working at Ralph Lauren and then working at a much bigger textile supplier within the industry, and kind of cut my teeth on product development that way. So when I launched, even though I was still only, 5 or 6 years into a professional career, it gave me enough of a foundation to have networks of suppliers, understand, how product was developed, to sort of be dangerous enough and not fearful enough to take the leap on my own. But it's interesting because I'll tell you that imposter syndrome is real. So you could have a degree in interior design and you could have worked in a firm and you might have a dream of going off on your own. And when you like hang your virtual shingle, you still feel like an imposter the first time you're sitting face to face trying to negotiate a deal. And I know so many people who have gone the route of interior design as a second career or something creative as a second career who don't have the formal background, but who understand then they have to hire professionals who work with them or under them or for them in order to execute their vision. But it doesn't take anything away from the fact that they're creative enough and have great vision to be able to help people. So I don't believe you have to have the formal training as long as you're working with people who do so that you don't make mistakes when you're going for it.
I think that's really a valuable thing that you just said. And we've started this conversation talking about barriers, right? Like,
Yeah.
I didn't have the formal training in interiors, or I have that imposter syndrome, or whatever it is. But I think once you're in it, like you've started, you hung your shingle, so to
Yeah.
speak. You started and you had no idea that freedom of time and that freedom of place that you were going for was really going to mean like a baby on my hip with a phone on my ear. Um,
100%.
but at what point, like, I know for me that took, I don't know, 5 years before I got to the point where I wasn't like 24/7. Did it
Yeah.
take you that long, or did you discover a way to do this quicker?
No, it did. I think some of it is personal choice. I became
Yes.
once I
We do it
once
to
I
ourselves,
did
you mean?
it, right. And listen, I went off and like went in a direction that required more funding. So it would have been different, I think, had I started originally as a design studio
Right.
where I didn't have inventory or overhead. When I launched my company, I first launched Libatex, which is a commercial textile supplier. So that required like running sample yardage and making memo
Mm.
samples and bringing in inventory. And I mortgaged my house to do it. So, it was like where there's a will, there's a way. So, like you
There
said, I
you
had a
go,
baby
right
on my
there.
hip. I had leveraged every penny of equity that we had in our first home. And I became obsessed with making sure I could pay it back. And so, for me, it was sort of it felt like a 24-hour endeavor where even when I wasn't working, I was thinking about working and I was thinking about what I had to do next. And I spent too much time worrying. So like my advice to anybody who's just getting started is to sort of trust the process, like to trust that if this seed was planted in your heart to start your thing, that the universe has your back. Like you'll be taken care of if you just keep putting one foot in front of the next. But I spent a lot of wasted energy in worry and
Mm,
what if I lose my house, if I can't pay back this mortgage, you know, all of it like that just became almost like a sense of the weight of the world, which was unnecessary because the bank didn't require me to pay the whole loan back immediately. Like it
right.
was, as
You
long
just
as
have
I
to
was
service the
making
loan.
my minimum payment, we were going to be okay. And like my backup plan with my husband was if the worst happened under that circumstance and I declared bankruptcy and they took my house, we would move in with his parents. Like he was like, okay, my parents said we could live in their basement. We have a backup plan. And let me tell you, like, there's nothing more motivating than the fear of having to move in with your mother-in-law. So I think that like
Absolutely.
24-hour type of grind was just like, all right, how do I make sure that doesn't happen? And then you fall in love with it. A business becomes almost like a child, becomes
Yep.
this entity in and of itself that you had the vision to create, you nurture, you love it, you believe in it. And so you sort of become almost obsessed with it. I know other business owners that like have done a much better job at saying, this is going to be my work time and this is going to be my family time. And I'm going to trust that things are going to flow to me. And that probably brings success even faster.
No, I'm
I
not that
I
person either, so
well, I'm a big worrier, so that really speaks to me. I'm not that optimistic. And I think that like when you get into that deep pit of despair, it can lead to burnout. So you have to feel really motivated. Was that your motivation? Like really, what was your motivation? Like you really want the business to do well. You don't want to fail. What were some things that kept you from getting burned out?
Yeah, I was young, so I think, I
Yeah,
had a very
exactly. That
different
helps.
level of stamina, than I do today. Um, I also am fortunate that I have a really strong support system. And that came in the form of my mother, who was there to help care for my child, who was there, speaking
Mhm.
blessings over me on probably a daily basis. I have an incredible husband of 27 years, almost who was the one who pushed me to say, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Like, just do this. What would it take? Those were like his famous words. Well, what
Mm.
would it take to do your own thing? Well, what would it take to launch it? And I was like, well, I need money. Okay. Well, what if we could get money? What would it take after that? And he is a conservative accountant. So to have
Mm.
somebody like that as your backup of like believing in you was a huge help. I would say if you don't live near family or you're not surrounded by people who are encouraging, you need like probably the most important thing that will set you up for success is to find a tribe of people who are there like fanning your flames, who are there encouraging you to go for it. And that might come in the form of, networking groups. That might come in the
Mhm.
form of a mastermind group. So if you haven't heard of that, there are groups all over the country that you can join. And it's usually other small business owners, and you meet, sometimes once a month. And it's a small group of people that are just there. A lot of them are pay to play, but those kind of things, I can't tell you how much having a supportive network will help you reach your dreams, no matter what stage you are in your business.
It's a great plug, Stacy. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yep, just like DesignDash, that's exactly what we do.
Yep.
So you said something earlier that really stuck with me. Well, a couple things. So obsession, absolutely. You have to be obsessed. I think that is, you don't have to be, but damn, I think it helps. So obsession. And then also like you played out worst case scenario over and over. But are you also an optimist? Like, did you really think like, like worst case scenario is kind of just something maybe entrepreneurs work out in their brain so they know what happens if they fail. However, they are really planning for success. Like, are you an optimist?
Oh, totally. I mean, I have the vision board, with
Okay.
the hotels I plan on owning and, the places I want to travel and all of it, the grandchildren I plan on having one day. Like, yes, I'm an eternal optimist, but I'm going to say like a worst case scenario planner, right? I am like almost to
Yeah.
like a doomsday degree. And so when I've made decisions in my life about, whether it was like having children, starting a business, whether or not to buy the house, whatever it was that were these big decisions or that felt like big decisions for me at the time, I always go through the like, what is the absolute worst case scenario that I can think of in my head? Not everybody's wired like this. I just am. I've been told by some of my team members that it's an issue that I have to deal with. Like they're all happy, go lucky, everybody's good. They're like, why do you always go to the worst case scenario? I'm like, because if I can live with the consequence, then I know we
Yeah.
should move forward. And if I can't live with the
Yes.
consequence, then it's probably a pause and let's rethink, what a better solution might be. And so, this is almost constant. Like, okay, we're going to make a new hire. We want to onboard new people for X, Y, and Z. Okay, what is their salary going to cost me? Their healthcare going to cost me? How much do they need? We need to increase sales to cover them. All the questions that
Yep.
you need to consider as a business owner. And then it's like, okay, well, my worst case scenario is they stink and we'll know it in 6 months. And, maybe worst is a year. And then we've lost this much money and this much time. Can we live with that for the potential upside? And if the answer is yes, you go.
If you're a designer, then you know that High Point is the epicenter for all things interior design. All your favorite furniture vendors are there, your favorite designers, manufacturers, tastemakers, trendsetters. Market happens every April and October, and we hope you'll register and attend. We're there each market, and we're always finding something new. We know you will too. Check out highpointmarket.org for more information. Well, we've talked a little bit about where you've been. What about what you're doing now? What are you really excited about now? What are you working on?
So we have a lot of fun things that are going on. So, over the last few years, I've really made a conscious decision from my Libatex business actually to replace myself because I run two
Good for you.
companies. Yeah, it's been a journey. It's been one that so far has been really well worth it. And so, depending on where you are in your stage of the career, I highly recommend. So I run two businesses. Libatex is the textile firm, and then Stacy Garcia Design Studio, which partners with manufacturers, and we create product collections and bring them to market. And so I made a
Um,
decision that it was pulling me, as the companies were scaling, it was too hard for me to lead and run both and operate them well. And so I've spent the last probably 3 years working on some key hires on the textile side to replace myself from the day to day operations and decision making. And I have a really incredible team there that has they're better than I am. I mean, it's when you hire people who have, equal passion and maybe more experience and good leadership and good decision making, it's a game changer. So that's been
uh,
huge. And that's been sort of 3 years in the making, which has allowed me to focus time on our licensing and the design side, which is really where I get excited. When I started the business, yes, it was freedom. It was also to bring creative ideas to the market. I'm an artist, I'm a textile designer, pattern designer, and I love the world of color and material and design and interiors. I didn't want to spend my days looking at spreadsheets, and I think those are some of the things we don't consider when we start our own business is like, oh, well, there's accounts payable and accounts receivable and purchase orders and stuff that seems like really boring when you're a creative mind. And so, bringing bringing those people in who are good at that and replacing myself from some of that has really given me more time back to dedicate toward the creative side of my business, which is the design side. And so we actually recently launched a upholstery collection. So I'm really excited about that. We went Wayfair exclusive and partnered with a company that we work with on the hospitality side. So they bring like their mechanisms for their sleeper sofas are designed for hotels. So they're these really, really high
mm,
quality pieces. It's through a company called Edgecombe, but we brought beautiful silhouettes that really feel more residential because they were hospitality. And so it was sort of like this interesting partnership
okay.
where I have a residential arm to our business. I loved what they were doing, and we've worked with them for many years on the hotel side. And we sort of sat down and said, hey, I think there's an opportunity here. They were starting to get into Wayfair. And so, they said yes. What was interesting is we launched our first collection, which is called Layla, which is named after my daughter, and really
Oh.
pretty, sort of like feminine silhouette to it. The first two orders come in and they were for boutique hotels.
Oh.
So she called me and she was like, I know we're supposed to be selling the consumer market, but like, is it okay if we sell to boutique hotels too? And I'm like, yeah, like the product's built for hotels. She's like, yeah, they really liked that it didn't look like a hotel. Like they wanted the boutique hotel to look like a luxury home. So, that's good.
New
And
niche
again,
unlocked.
and I like the idea of being able to bring interior designers more like performance product, that's not super expensive. So we all work on projects, that have a guest room or have a basement that needs a pull-out sofa for the guests. You don't want to
Yep.
spend a fortune on it, but you want it to last. You want it to look good, so you don't necessarily need to be shopping from the high-end houses because it's not the main room. So, we really feel like
Mm.
we came up with beautiful product. And then our second collection, we just previewed it. So that one's called Ari. I'm going for four because I have four children. So, I've got one more in the works and then hopefully at least one more after. But it's been a fun partnership to work on and, to bring the visions and the performance qualities because I do so much work also on the hospitality side. So got great new stuff. And then we have a new trend forecast, which always like new product always launches with that. So on, the more commercial or crossover side of our market, we have new wall coverings. Through Corsail, I have Tile Bar, beautiful new
Wow.
line called Radius. So they're a fun one because they sell, commercial and residential. So we're seeing this return to traditional again,
Good.
sort of like it's been so modern, 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 and, very beige across the board. Of course, I'm sure your listeners are doing unique things and really cool things. But I'm excited because as somebody who spends a lot of time doing trend forecasting, we're seeing more color come back. I'm seeing this kind of like
Yep.
ode to the 70s a little bit, this kind of like retro
Same. I'm obsessed with it.
revival. I love it. I'm like,
Yeah,
and
I'm
the
redoing
jewel
my own living room right now,
tones.
and I'm like 70s. I wanted to feel like one of those like conversation pits and everybody's loungy.
Yes, I love it. Love. And it's funny, like before we went live, we were talking a little bit about like why the listeners need to care about the trends and
Yeah.
how, what we do on the product side. We're launching stuff that like we could be working on 2 years ago. Like we have a long development cycle. So I have a new
Mm.
lighting line coming up, but it's not going to launch till next January. We've been in, kind of prototyping for 6 months already. So there's things that it takes us 18 months, sometimes 2 years before products are ready to be brought to market. So we really need to follow trend to make sure when it launches, it looks new and exciting. And then when you spec it, it still looks new and exciting. And when your
Right.
client lives with it for the next 8 or 10 years, they still love it. So we have to look forward because you're doing kitchen and bath design. Like your client's never ripping that out. They're going to sell the house before they rip it out, probably. So it has to have longevity. And we're really, really thoughtful about looking forward at where the trends are going. And the fun part too is if you're a designer listening to this and you do home renovation, not new construction, you have a blank slate. Like you can do whatever you want. But when you're going in and you're walking a project with a client, and this just happened. So, I was walking, my sister actually just purchased a home. And so I want to say it was built in like the late 80s and it has not been touched since then.
Time
And
capsule.
it is a time capsule home. And we started walking through before she brought her designer in because I said to her, listen, this is like, it's a large project. You need somebody who's going to be in charge of this for you.
That is not me.
It's not me. I love you. If you lived in New York, maybe, but you don't and I can't and you need really, but I'll give you my opinions on things. So we walk through and she's got wood ceilings and a
Mm.
stone fireplace that goes floor to ceiling. And it's sort of a double height living room and entry. And then an old 80s bar. So you're like talking about, she can't wait to take a sledgehammer to this bar. But she was like looking at the ceilings, which sort of have almost like a warm orangey undertone
Yep.
because they've aged. And she's
Mhm.
like, so I want to like either get rid of those or sand them down and bleach them out. And I looked at her and I was like, do not touch it and do not
Coming
touch the
back.
stone. Don't touch the stone on this fireplace and don't touch those ceilings because it almost is like copper. It's not like cherry.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't know. Are you sure? I'm like, I promise you, when everything else is gone, all the new materials are like coppers and browns and burgundies and 70s revival. And it's going to look amazing. Like just so then her designer comes through and says the same thing. Like, no,
So
you
she
gotta
needed
leave
that
it.
reinforcement.
She needed the validation. And so I think it's our job,
Not for her
with our
sister, the trend
clients.
forecaster. She needs it from someone else.
Totally. So, but when you're working with your clients, like some of your job is to also convince them, like,
Yeah.
no, these need to be salvaged. Like, these are the things that it's really hard to replicate. And, it's expensive to
Totally.
buy vintage planks and reclaimed planks if you're building a new construction and you're trying to give it soul. So, knowing sort of where the trends are leading helps you make those decisions and guide your client.
Oh, I love that. We had something similar with a client in Houston. She was purchasing a lot. She thought it was a lot. It had a house on
Mhm.
it. I walked it with her and I said, if you tear this house down, that is a huge mistake. It was from
Yeah.
the 80s. Incredible. We spent 2 years renovating it and it is like hands down one of the best projects I've ever done. And thank God she did not tear that house down. It is fabulous. We have won awards for it. Like it is amazing, but it is convincing. You have to be able to convince your client that you can see the potential that's
Yeah.
coming down the line 2 years later. That's a really long lead time.
Yeah.
That's a really long, like, I know it, like, conceptually, but hearing you say it, like, I've been working on this for over a year, and I have to project 8 years ahead to make sure it's still relevant.
Yeah.
That's kinda
And with
mind blowing.
residential design too, you're also walking the line of like, look, it's not a boutique hotel. You're not storytelling a narrative for the locale. This is somebody's home. It has to reflect their style, their
Right.
taste, their dreams, the way they entertain, not the vision you see just from a creative perspective. But
Hmm.
if those visions align with all of the other personal story that they bring to the table and their style, it's a win. And I do believe our job as designers is to push people a little bit out of their comfort zone. If they were going to
Absolutely.
do it themselves, they could shop a catalog and they would
Mhm.
look like everybody else who bought out of that, store or catalog, showroom, whatever. They hire you because they want to be pushed. They want to have something that nobody else can have that's just
Yeah.
unique to them.
We talk about this with our junior designers on our team because a lot of times a client, we want them to show us, bring us images of things that you love. And we have to tell the younger designers on our team, like, we are not taking those images verbatim
Right.
and copying that room and handing it to them. That is not what we're doing. We
Right.
want to see what they have, what's in their mind so we can pull what's in their mind out. But then we are here to push them. That's what they're
That's right.
asking for. Um, I've rarely had a client, maybe once, that's like, that wants exactly what they've handed us.
Right.
If they do, then that's not a client for us. Like, you're right. Go to a catalog. You can do this on your own. So
Totally.
I want to circle back because you're doing a lot. You have a ton of opportunities right now and like a ton of momentum. So how are you deciding what to say yes to? Is it that you're playing out that worst case scenario and like, if I can live with that, yes. Or like, are you intentionally setting, you said the word boundaries earlier. Do you have a matrix you're running decisions through, like your core values? How are you making decisions when you have so many opportunities?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And it's one that I'm literally like in the middle of reevaluating again. And the takeaway that if you're listening right now is so important is that there are different chapters. There are different, it's not even that it's a ladder, it's like a different evolution
Mm,
as you are growing within your business and as you are growing as a human in your life. And so what's interesting to me is the things that I wanted in my 20s, a lot of them I achieved.
mhm.
I don't know if you knew this. I was on QVC, like that was on my vision board. And I sold a
Uh,
brand to QVC called Stay by Stacy Garcia. And it was all inspired by hospitality. And because again, I have
that's
core
incredible.
in there, like Marriott and Hilton and Hyatt have been my clients for years and years with all of our product. So taking that concept, and I was on for 3 years, like selling pillows and bedding and, touching and learning how to be on air live. So all of these things that at one point were goals and dreams of mine, I'm fortunate to be able to say, wow, I accomplished so many
Yeah.
of them. At the time, my 20s, I thought I wanted to have a massive company with like hundreds of people. I scaled. I never got to hundreds, but I scaled into the double digits and it becomes a completely different level of management. And then you have to
Same,
level
same.
people in. And I remember working with a coach at the time who was like, oh, all of my friends are like scaling down. And I was like, that's crazy. I don't know why you'd want to scale down. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. You're speaking a different language right now.
Was that in
And
your 30s? That
that
sounds like
probably,
my
it was
30s.
definitely, I must have been in my late 30s and it still
Yeah.
didn't make any sense to me. This chapter, and listen, I know women in their 50s and 60s who are just getting started in scaling huge things.
Yep.
This chapter for me, I've been through the scale mode. Now I'm getting into like my new word is discernment. And,
Yes.
there's inflection points throughout it's not just your career, it's your life. It's, you know, things that are happening outside of career that sometimes do impact the
Mhm.
decisions you make about how you want to spend your life and what that balance looks like for you. I also got to a point, when you're starting, you're sort of willing to take anything.
Yeah.
And, as an interior designer, you're like, you know, please, 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 please. And you'll say yes to anything. And
Because
it's
you're
like,
obsessed.
You're obsessed and you want to make money and you want to show your stuff and you need to build a portfolio.
Yep.
And, we laugh still because it's like the smallest clients end up being the biggest pain in the neck. And like the ones who are giving us huge orders, it's like, here's my money and the order goes through and I'll see you when it's done. Like,
and they're like,
they
say thank you.
They say thank you. They have a high level of trust for you. It's so like, I don't know. There's a Yiddish word called machaya. Like it's such a machaya. It's like a relief. It feels so good when you have clients who respect what you do, trust what you do. It takes time to get there. You have to build that portfolio out. But almost more importantly than the portfolio is you have to build out the confidence that you have in yourself and that what you bring to the table has value and deserves to be valued. And that you're going to be selective about the type of clients you say yes to, because what took me many years to learn is that the only thing I cannot create more of is time. And so if I say yes to client A, who is not my ideal profile, but I say yes to them because I'm trying to fill my schedule, that now takes up place on my calendar that I might have to say no to potential client B or C because I said yes to client A. And meanwhile, client A is a pain in the neck and they're not my avatar and they're not the kind of person I should be working with. So I would have been better off saying no, leaving an empty schedule and creating space for the opportunity for the right client to come to me.
Totally. We talk about this a lot.
Yeah. And it's scary to say no to money. Like it's scary to say no to opportunity. But every single time I have done it, the universe answers me swiftly with the right type of client.
Yep.
I think there's often more opportunity in saying no than saying yes. Sometimes there's just a lot of power, I think, in saying no.
There is a lot of power. And that is something, it's funny. I used to pride myself in saying yes.
Yeah.
I used to be like a badge of honor. That I could take it on, figure out how to scale it, grow it. And, what you do is you create chaos and stress for yourself.
And for your team too.
Totally. Because you're doing things that aren't in your wheelhouse. You don't have your system down. And it's almost like the girl at the dance who will say yes to anyone who offers her, a dance to have. Like, you don't want to be easy.
Don't be easy.
Don't be easy. Like in that manner, be easy to work with, be a professional, but you are, you know who you're right for. Right. So you don't have to say yes to everything that might not be right for you. It really, I think releasing that, like you said, Melissa, like there's power in saying no. There's power in the release. And part of that is almost trusting that you're behaving as even more of a professional to understand and recognize for that client, actually, I'm not the right person for you.
Yep.
So, I had read a book. I don't remember what it was called. It was something like the Creative's Manifesto, something amazing. And one of the things they were saying is like, if you were going to a physician, you're not going to dictate to the doctor what you need.
Right.
A good physician, based on the Hippocratic oath of caring for their patients and doing no harm, is going to first evaluate you before they prescribe for you. And in the evaluation, what they may find is actually you don't need a cardiologist. What you really need is a GI doctor. So let me refer you to the right professional. And in the creative field, we fail to recognize that. We're creative problem solvers. Like we can come up with an answer to anything. We're creative people. And as you build your business, whether that means scaling it up, scaling it down, or just getting your arms around something that really creates a great lifestyle for you and gives you happiness and feeds your soul and puts money in your pocket, you start to realize there are a certain type of client and rules that you've created that worked really well with those clients. And that might be, hey, I don't do one-off rooms anymore, right? Yeah. Or I have a minimum fee to even take the project. or whatever, fill in the blank. I don't do new construction. That's not my thing.
Mhm.
Whatever it is that is in your wheelhouse. And then you get really clear on what goes right and what your process looks like. And that's a game changer because then you start to be able to sort of assess before you prescribe. You
Mhm.
have an onboarding interview. You can sort of see if they're the right fit for you, not just are you the right fit for them. So I started to, once I read that, I started to approach all these opportunities as I'm interviewing the client as much as they're interviewing me. And they may not be the right fit for me, and that's okay. And
Mhm.
if I have someone in my network, I'm happy to refer them out.
Could not have said it better. We subscribe to everything you just said. Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. We are interviewing this client for potential fit as much as they are us. We do refer out to our network all the time because we are not the right fit for everyone. That would be impossible. If you're for
Correct.
everyone, you're for no one. So I
Correct.
totally agree. We have a matrix. That's why I asked you earlier. Do you have a matrix that you're weighing your decisions? Because we actually do. We don't use I don't use it as much now because I know it inside and out. So I can kind
Yep.
of gut identify who's a good fit. But we really did that for a while when we were having a hard time discerning
Yep.
what was a good fit and what wasn't. And we actually had like a ranking of 10 different things, whether it was like project location. Is this client nice? Will they let
Yes.
us
Ding,
photograph? Like
ding, ding,
those
ding.
kinds of like
Okay.
we
I
want
have
to
a
work with
no
people
diva
we like.
rule.
And so we did run new projects through this matrix because we had ended up on several projects at the same time that were really miserable. And,
Mhm.
like, when a designer comes back from a site visit in tears, something is going wrong. And so, yes, we've done all of that. So I love that idea of just like,
Yeah.
yes, we're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing us. But I know we're butting up against time. So Melissa, do you have anything before I hit my rapid fire?
Yeah, so we started out this conversation with you wanted freedom. What is the one thing that you did that got you there to that freedom?
Ooh, good one.
Oh, that is good. I think over time, it was hiring some of the right people,
Mm,
so really
yep.
not, letting go of the fact that I did not want to be a team of one. There's a lot of solo practitioners. I found that very hard to have freedom. So getting a support team, getting on the same page with those people, giving them parameters on, like you said, what is the decision making framework so that they
Mhm.
can move projects forward without me has been huge. So, for me, that freedom, there are, my husband described, I'm going to put it like this to every entrepreneur who's listening out there, that lady, Justice, who like has her arms out and she's balanced equally with your life and your work does not exist. Like he's like maybe in the courts with a blindfold. And even then, it's questionable. Life, especially on an entrepreneurial journey, he said to me was like a seesaw. So he said, there are times when you get on one side of the seesaw and you're on the ground, and that's where you're planted, and you have time with your family, and you get the opportunity to take these rich vacations or moments off or work from home on Fridays or whatever it is that you want to do, or a long morning, to just hang with our daughter or whatever it is. And then there are times where the other part of your life is on the ground and someone else is supporting that, and you're up on the seesaw. And he's like, the goal for you has to be a reframe because I think I was on this hamster wheel of trying to figure out how to balance every single day.
Right. Mhm.
And he was like, that is an impossible challenge and you will never win and you will burn out. So if you can get comfortable building that type of freedom where there are going to be weeks where like, I mean, I worked till 9:30 last night. Like, let's talk real talk. I was in my office alone. Everything else I was the only car out in the parking lot. And I grinded till 9:30 at night because I had stuff to get done.
Mhm.
So that tonight I can get on a plane to Peru with my oldest son and spend the next week hiking Machu Picchu.
Oh my
So,
god,
for
amazing.
me,
Wonderful.
that's what the balance looks like. Like it is work hard, play hard.
Good. Love it. All right. Rapid fire. Just 3 questions. Okay, first, one trend that designers are overreacting to right now.
Oh gosh. I don't know if it's an overreaction. I'm going to be honest. I keep seeing, we talked about the 70s. I'm seeing tons of like checkerboard tile and things that just feel warm and like almost like a mush of a little bit of cottagecore and vintage decor and, you know, a wink of the 80s, but mostly 70s. I'm seeing it everywhere, but I'm into it. Like, I don't think they're going too crazy for it. I feel like we're just getting started
Okay.
on this like much more warm trend. I will say some of the forecasts I'm seeing are predicting like broadloom carpet coming back, like wall to wall carpet. I don't know. Like, I'm not on board for that one. But that's what some of the forecasts are talking about.
Huh. I got to simmer in that for a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that I'll ever be ready for it.
I don't know. I'm like, maybe I could get down with some wall to wall.
I don't know. Maybe. Talk to me in 2 years.
All right. Okay. One shift designers should start paying attention to sooner than they think.
So I think when you're looking at shift in color palette, especially if you're doing kitchen and bath or hard surface. So those are areas that are less disposable, for lack of a better word. There are things that you can put into somebody's home. Maybe it's a funky accent chair, you know, maybe it's a living room furniture. A level of client that's hiring an interior designer is probably going to be on a renovation cycle. I'm going to push the limits and say 10 years. Okay. If your design and your sofa in the fabric you spec'd it on is the client still loves it 10 years from now in their primary home, you've done an amazing job. But I do think that we get sick of things and we want refresh. And the person we were when we bought it 10 years ago, even if it's in great condition, is not the same person. So I would call those the more disposable items. Again, kitchens, bathrooms, hard surface flooring. You want to be ahead of those trends because your client probably isn't seeing what's going to be coming. But you need to know, like, if waterfall countertops are leaving the building, you don't want to be speccing them into new kitchens. You know, if white kitchens are not going to be the thing anymore, or a gray kitchen, and I saw it. And it's like, if you're an interior designer, you need to know what's happening in that world so that you're going to have to be coaching your clients if you're early.
Did we overdo it on the Zeliage tile?
I don't think so.
All right.
I don't think so. I think,
You're into
you
it.
know, there's something about handcrafted
Yeah.
that is, to me, it's timeless. I think there is just beauty to it and a depth to it. So I'm not over it yet. I think
All
it's
right,
still going to go
good.
strong.
You think we got 10 years on it?
Oh, at least.
Okay, last question. What is one thing that you cannot live without in your design right now?
I like tension. So whatever that is, okay, I like putting tension in design. I think, you know, having something unexpected, whether that's a shock of color, a new material, everything soft and rounded, and then you put something that's more hard edged, it makes an interior feel interesting. And again, one of a kind.
Yeah, in our office, we call that the foil to the room.
Yeah.
Like the whole color palette is whatever, navy and white, and then you add some fuchsia, and it's like, that's the activator. I love that.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I'm going to use that
You-
term.
you
That
need
is
your
the activator. That made it come alive.
Yes, exactly. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a really great
Thanks.
conversation. Business,
Thank
trends,
you.
activators. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here.
Loved it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out our next podcast coming live next week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, you can find us and more wonderful stories like these on DesignDash.com. And make sure to follow us at DesignDasher on Instagram and TikTok. Till next time.